Hi everyone and welcome to Book Boop. My name is Rachel and today I'm going to be talking about all the books in May that I read. So my May wrap up. I read a total of 5 books in May and my entire theme for May was circus themed. The circus theme was in honor of Finale, which is the last book in the Caraval series that came out. And that whole series sort of has this circusy vibe to it, so I thought it'd be really fun to have an entire circus theme. And I actually had a lot of fun with all the books that I read in May. They were actually great, and I loved reading all of them, and I can't wait to tell you about them. So let's go ahead and jump in. I do have a notebook here with some notes in it and stuff, so I don't forget what I'm going to say and all that, and I don't lose my train of thought and all that kind of stuff, so I apologize if I'm looking off camera a little bit to read my notes, but I just want to make sure I stay clear and concise for you all. So the very first book that I read in May was called Circus Mirandus, and I borrowed that one from the library. Most of them I borrowed from the library, so I'm not able to hold them up for you. I ended up taking them back already. The first one is Circus Mirandus, and that book is by Cassie Beasley. It is a middle grade book, and a basic idea of the story is it follows this boy who is living with his grandfather, and his grandfather has told him tales about this magical circus called Circus Mirandus that he went to when he was a kid, and how there was an actual, for real magician there, someone that could actually do magic, and it was just this incredibly magical place. When his grandfather is ailing and he's not doing well and he's probably going to pass away soon, his grandfather tells his grandson that this magician owes him a miracle, and so the little boy tries to see if he can find Circus Mirandus to get this miracle from his grandfather to hopefully save him. It was a really, really sweet story, again in middle grade, so it was a really quick read. It had a nice feel-good kind of thing to it. I loved the relationship so much between the grandson and the grandfather. Oh my goodness, it was so sweet. They just had this strong bond, and I just loved how desperately this boy held on to the stories that his grandfather told him about his childhood, and it was so sweet. I loved it so much. It had so much of the importance of family legacy and family care. There was one of the things that this family, they were called, I think, the Beasley family, and one of the things the family did is they were known for being really good at tying knots. I know that sounds weird, but he and his grandfather bonded over that, and bonded over the fact that they could tie these incredible intricate knots and all these things, and they called it kind of a magic within itself. It was really cool to have that sort of like family legacy type thing and how important that was. There was a lot of emphasis on childlike wonder and holding on to that and having that childlike wonder when you go to the circus and believing in the magic that you see and all of that. I'm really looking forward to reading the sequel. So the sequel actually comes out this year. I should have looked at the name of it, but again, it's by Cassie Beasley, and so it's the second book. I don't know if there's gonna be another one after that, but I'm really excited to read it. I just love this book. I adored it, and I can't wait to see what happens next in the series. It very much wraps itself up well at the end of the first book, so it could just kind of be a standalone thing if you wanted to take it and give it a try. It's just so cute. It was such a cute little magical read, and I loved it. I gave it 4 stars out of 5. The second book that I read, again, I borrowed from the library, was Finale by Stephanie Garber. Finale is the 3rd book in the Caraval series. If you've never heard of the Caraval series before, it is about these 2 sisters named Stella and Scarlett. Both the sisters have been very obsessed about this circus of sorts called Caraval, and Caraval is run by this person called Legend, and he's truly legendary. He's supposed to actually be able to wield magic, and Caraval is not only just a circus and a show, but it's also a competition and a game. So people can come to Caraval and participate in the game, and usually there's like a list of clues and they have to find certain things, and if they are able to get to the end of the game, then they are granted some kind of prize. In Caraval, the prize is a wish. So it's very circusy, very kind of cool. I'm not going to tell you a whole lot of the synopsis for Finale in case you haven't read Caraval, because I don't want to give any spoilers or anything. But Finale was the 3rd and final book in the series. I was pretty excited to read it. It was about on the same level as Legendary for me. So the first book is Caraval, second book is Legendary, third is Finale. Legendary, I didn't really like as much. It was kind of I enjoyed Caraval a lot more. That one was a standalone, just great thing for me. Legendary is kind of meh. I was really hoping that finale would lift it back up for me, and unfortunately, I was actually kind of disappointed. I did like the dual perspectives in this one. So the first book, Caraval, focuses on Scarlet's perspective. The second book focuses on Tella's, and then finale has both girls' perspectives. So it switches back and forth between the girls, which was kind of neat. I liked having the dual perspectives with that. I had a lot of trouble feeling invested in this story, and I think it's because it was very romance heavy, and I don't terribly like books that are so focused on that. I don't mind there being romance in there. I just like it when it focuses on something else other than just the romance solely, and I feel like there was too much focus on like this love triangle kind of feeling and this angst, and there was just too much of that and not enough else in the book to me, so I had trouble feeling invested. The larger plot points lacked punch for me. So there were a few points in the book where there's supposed to be these big sort of surprising reveals, and you're supposed to be like, oh my goodness, and it's supposed to be this big twist, and I just never felt that way. All of those plot points that were supposed to kind of just supposed to get you, they fell flat for me. They just didn't surprise me. I didn't feel shocked by them. I was just like, oh, okay. All right then. And so there was a few of those in the book, and just every single one of them fell flat for me. So I really wasn't feeling it. The ending to me was really rushed. So while we got further towards the end of finale, the plot picked up more, the story picked up more. It was less focused on the romance. It was more focused on the main sort of like issue at hand. And I got to a certain point in the book and I was like, wow, it's really picking up. There's not very many pages left. How is this going to end? And I was a little worried by that point. I was like, this is going to be rushed. I can tell if there's not this many pages left and this is the last book. Ugh. And I was right. The ending was so rushed, and it got really pretty exciting towards the end, but it just was so fast. And I wish it would have taken more time to develop that maybe it would have started earlier in the book. I don't know. It just was too rushed. I would have liked to have seen better pacing for the ending. It was just too rushed of an ending. And I also would have liked to have seen more of an epilogue. There wasn't a whole lot. I felt like it just ended really abruptly, and there wasn't a lot of descriptors of what happens like later. I don't know. It just sort of ended abruptly, and I was like, oh, okay, we're done, I guess. Okay. And so it was a little bit too abrupt for me. And then the last thing that, as I thought about it later, that bothered me, and I think what I loved about Caraval so much, Caraval has so much focus on the sisterly bond between Scarlet and Tella, and how important that is, and how they protect each other, and how they love each other, and there's so much focus on that. And then the second book, there isn't really any focus on it. It's very much focused on Tella and very much focused on romance things for her and romance things for Scarlet, and they're very much separate. And I was hoping to see them come back together again in finale, and honestly, they really just didn't. They just didn't have that sisterly bond again. They were just both so focused on their own romance lives that it was like they just didn't have that connection like they did in the first book that I thought was so special. So all in all, I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think I gave Legendary 3 stars, I don't remember. But it was kind of meh. It fell flat for me. I was sad that this was the last book because it just didn't. I was hoping it would lift it back up after Legendary for me, and it just didn't. I think I liked it slightly more than Legendary, maybe. I don't know. But it was a little bit of a disappointment. But I mean, it's still a great series. I think it's still worth reading. It's still enjoyable, especially if you do like kind of like love triangle type things and just sort of a little bit more angst and pull for romance. If you like that, go for it. There's a lot of magic involved, especially if anything, read Caraval. You could honestly read Caraval and not read the other two, and I think you'd be fine. You wouldn't be itching to like know what happens necessarily. It doesn't end on like a huge cliffhanger. To me, it doesn't anyways. So I feel like you could just read Caraval and be done with it. All right, so that's 2 books down. The third book I read is not in the circus theme. They happened to have this at my library, and I could not pass it up because it was a brand new book. It came out on the same day as finale, and I was like, if I don't get it now, it's not going to be available when I want to read it because a lot of people are going to want to read this. And for some reason, it was available like the day after it came out, and I had to read it. And that is Aurora Rising by Amie Kaufman and Kristoff. These are the same people that wrote the Illuminae files, and I was so glad I picked this up. Oh my goodness. It was so good. I loved it so much. And again, I know it's not part of the circus theme. I'm sorry. All the other books are, I promise. But that one, I needed to read it like now. I was so pumped about it. I read the Illuminae Files in January. So that was like a really recent, just like, awesome series for me. And so when I saw Aurora Rising coming out and the same people that wrote them, I was like, I need to read this book. And it was so good. I love these writers together so much. I will read everything they put out. Everything. It is so good. It gave me the same feel as Illuminae Files, lots of action, super fast paced, and lots of witty dialogue. I love the dialogue in their books. It is kind of like it's YA, and the dialogue is very YA, but it's very witty, it's funny. And these stories, like Aurora Rising, from the minute it starts to where it ends, it is nonstop insanity action, and it is so good. I love it so much. Mainly the only sci-fi I've pretty much read is kind of Illuminae Files and Aurora Rising, and I love it. I love it so much. There are 7 main characters in Aurora Rising, which sounds like a lot, but I absolutely loved them all. I loved all of the main characters. It was so much fun to get to learn their backstories and who they are and their personalities, and it was a blast. I love learning about all these characters. It definitely gave me Star Trek vibes and themes. I grew up watching Star Trek, just like TV shows, movies, all that kind of stuff. My dad's a Trekkie, and so I grew up with it. And it definitely gave me a lot of Star Trek vibes. Oh, I just realized I did not give any kind of synopsis. So Aurora Rising is about this kind of like space cadet place where these kids will train to basically man their own ship and be a part of a ship and a crew. And there's this, I'm forgetting the names of the characters, I'm sorry, but there's this kind of, one of the main characters we follow, he's kind of like the head boy at the school. He's like perfect at everything, perfect scores for everything. And on their basically graduation day, so how high you score on things, you get to pick your crew first and like get your pickings of who you want on your crew. Well, he ended up getting into a situation to where he missed that, and so now he is stuck with the bottom dredges of the academy, people that nobody else wanted, and they end up getting thrown into this sort of like, we gotta save the universe type thing, and it's so good. And I loved it. That's a very like extremely brief snippet of what the story is about. I'm having trouble thinking of how to describe it accurately because there's a lot going on in the story, but it's so worth it. And there was just a lot of Star Trek feels for me and just like lots of nods to just, I don't know, the feeling of the whole book just had that Star Trek vibe, which I really loved. And it was just so witty and crazy and fun. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. The only reason I did not give it 5 stars fully was for one thing. So like I said, there are 7 characters in this book, 7 main characters that we follow. The book is told in every single one of those characters' perspective. So each chapter will say a name of a character, and that's the name of the character, like the perspective we're in for that chapter. And there's 7 of them. So at any given time, you're in somebody else's frame of mind and thought pattern, and sometimes I struggled with that. I loved getting to learn about the characters and in their heads, but there were several times where I'd be halfway through a chapter and I go, whose perspective are we in again? I can't remember, and I have to like flip back to like the beginning of the chapter to see, oh, okay, we're with that person. So that was the only thing for me, because that kind of broke up the story for me a little bit to where it kind of would have to halt for me and be like, okay, who am I reading again? So that's the only reason I docked it off half a star, because that was kind of frustrating to me. Not to the point where it really affected my reading, but it kind of halted the reading and the pacing a little bit for me. So that's the only reason. But I highly recommend Aurora Rising. Oh my goodness, it was so good. So good. Okay, so after that, let's get back into the circus theme. Another book that I borrowed from the library is the one and only Ivan, and I just realized that I did not write down the author's name, so I'm sorry. I will put it down below. I'll list all these books down below. How about that? But the one and only Ivan is a middle grade book, and it follows the perspective of this gorilla who is in this very small habitat at this mall, basically. It's like a circus mall. There's some other animals there. There's like a ring that they take an elephant out in and have the elephant do tricks and that kind of thing. But the story just follows the perspective of Ivan and just him being trapped in this small cage with humans tapping on his glass and all that kind of stuff, and just him trying to care for his little elephant baby friend who ends up coming into the circus, and he's trying to care for this elephant. And it is so sweet, y'all. It is so sweet. It's a very, very quick read. It's the spacing of all the paragraphs and everything is so huge, and it just like, I could have easily read it within a day. It took me 2 days to read it, but just because of time. But it was such a sweet little read. It was very heartwarming and honestly a very bittersweet story. It had some very like sad moments in it, but they were beautiful. They were so beautiful. Like I said, it was a quick read. It shows the darker side of the animal entertainment industry, and just like some people that just don't end up caring for their animals very well, and just using them as a means to make money and not really actually caring for the animals. This book, One and Only Ivan, reminded me so much of the feeling that I have when I read Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web is one of my favorite books of all time. I read it so many times when I was a kid. And Charlotte's Web has that heartwarming feeling and just that inside glimpse of an animal, and your heart pours out for them. And that's how I felt when I read this book. When I read The One and Only Ivan, it just felt like Charlotte's Web to me. It gave me the same kind of feels. And so it was just so good. Oh yes, and just seeing how the animals would attempt to communicate with humans, because of course in these books the animals can't talk, and so they have to figure out ways to communicate important things to humans, and just seeing their struggle with that, like with Charlotte's Web, with Charlotte spinning the web and trying to spell words and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of had that feeling to it. I'm hoping for my daughter to read this one day. It was just such a sweet book. It was wonderful. So I highly recommend it. I gave it 5 stars. Just thinking within middle grade itself, not just like in like the entire box of all the books that I've ever read kind of feeling, but just kind of like within middle grade. My goodness, this was good. My goodness, this was so sweet. So highly recommend that one. And we are now to the last book that I read in May, book number 5. And I actually have this one on me. My sweet friend Jamie let me borrow this, and I really loved it a lot, and I can't wait to talk about it. I actually just finished this book last night, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. So The Night Circus has had so much coverage on BookTube. I hear about this book so much. It has so much praise and hype behind it. My friend Jamie, this is one of her favorite books, and then I have another good friend who actually didn't really like it at all. So I didn't know what to expect when going into this, because I didn't know if I was going to love it, if I was going to hate it. And there was just so much hype behind it, and sometimes the hype gets to me. But oh my goodness, y'all, this is so good. I really loved this book. So like I said, there was so much hype, but I was very, very pleasantly surprised with this book. It's extremely atmospheric and vivid storytelling. You feel like you're there. You feel like you can smell it. And oh my goodness, I just realized I didn't describe the book again. I'm getting bad at this. Okay, so Night Circus. It's about a circus at night. You good? Okay. No, I'm just kidding. That's true. It's about the circus at night, but this circus is pretty much the playing field between two for reals magicians, people that can actually do magic, that are, I guess you could say, they're in a competition and they're battling it out to see who wins, but not battling it out, but like they're on a stage like throwing spells at each other. They're kind of like doing more a subtle way in that they're each creating these different shows or these different attractions at the circus and kind of trying to best each other in these different attractions. That's basically the briefest thing I'm going to give you. There's so much more to the story than that, but I'm just going to tell you that much. So now that I've told you what this is about, again, very atmospheric, vivid storytelling. You felt like you were there. It just brought you to the past. It takes place in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it just kind of pulled you into that time period. It was so cool. It reminds me of the feeling so much of like a hometown festival. Like if you're if you have a certain hometown you grew up in, and maybe like every year there was like a specific fall festival that would open, and it just, when you're a kid, it just felt magical because you go to these streets that you would go to other times of the year. They were kind of like, okay, and then you go to these streets and they're set up with all these booths, and there's all this delicious smelling food and just all these new things and to see, and maybe some rides are set up, and it gave me that feeling, which was a good feeling. It just kind of pulled me to my childhood, to be honest. There are many characters in the story that we follow, but I felt invested in all of them. I felt like we got a good backstory for each one. I feel like there was a lot of focus on each one, and I grew to like love and care for all these characters, which was really cool, because sometimes when there's a lot of characters, it can feel overwhelming. So I actually really enjoyed just having these different characters and just getting to know them, and I just felt very invested in the story, which was really cool. I'm gonna turn my page here with my notes. All right, to me, it had very good pacing, kept me hooked. When I wasn't reading this book, I was thinking about reading this book. I just wanted to finish it. I really wanted to read it and see what happened. So it had really great pacing. The only downside to this book for me was the ending. And I can't tell you why. I'm not really sure why. It bothers me. I think it's maybe the ending's not what I was expecting it to be, or it didn't feel satisfying enough to me for some reason. But I can't pinpoint a specific reason why I feel that way. Maybe it's because I didn't want it to end. I don't know. Because I really enjoyed the ride. I really enjoyed reading through this book, and I got to the end, and for some reason I felt a little bit let down at the end. But again, I'm not sure why I felt let down at the end. I can't tell you why, I'm not sure. This is one of those books I would love to see as a movie one day. I feel like it would work really well as a movie. There's just so many visuals in this book. I think it'd be really cool. I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars as well. And again, I just docked it off 5.5 just because I felt a little unsatisfied at the ending. Not sure why, but I really adored this book, and I think this is one I would love to add to my collection one day, because I actually really liked it, and I think I would like to reread it someday. So it was really good. All right. If you have made it this far, thank you. Thank you for sticking around for my wrap-up for all the books I read in May. It was a really fun theme. The circus theme, I didn't know how it was going to go, but actually went really well, and I enjoyed it a lot. What did you read in May? Or, if you've read any of the books that I talked about today, what did you think about them? Did you love them? Did you hate them? Let me know. I'd love to know. On the side of the screen over here is my logo. If you click on that, you can subscribe to my channel and follow me on my book journey. On this side over here is a suggestion for another video if you want to watch another one right now. But thank you so much for watching. You rock, and don't forget to keep reading. Bye!